This is a simple introduction. I'm Simon Blake. After my personal film training, I then studied over 8,000 acting classes. Yes, classes. I love learning with people. Let's learn together. In my many years working with actors and musicians, I've come to realize a central truth. The most powerful performances are rarely born from the intellect alone. Yet, so many performers, especially those who are analytical or highly cerebral, tend to rely heavily on their minds when approaching their craft. They analyze the scene, think about what they should do, plan their responses, and sometimes get caught up in overthinking. While the mind is a valuable tool, I've found that it can also be a major obstacle to true artistic expression. Why? Because the essence of acting and music lies deep within us, within our emotional core, our subconscious, and our instinct. Rational thought tends to block or distort that connection. It creates a layer of distance between the performer and the authentic experience. When we focus too much on analysis, we risk sacrificing spontaneity, vulnerability, and the raw honesty that makes our art resonate. In my approach, I emphasize that emotional depth and intuitive response always outweigh the intellect. True artistry requires us to trust our inner feelings, our instinctive impulses, and what we genuinely experience in the moment. When we let our intellect dominate, our performances often feel staged, stiff, or superficial. But when we tap into our deeper emotional truth, our music and acting become alive, powerful, and deeply. This understanding is crucial for any performer committed to authentic artistry. In the pages ahead, I'll explore why relying solely on your mind is unreliable, and how cultivating emotional depth can unlock a richer, more compelling expression. Because, in the end, art is about feeling profoundly beyond the rational, beyond the logical, and connecting with others on the most genuine level possible. Let's look at this thing first. Emotional depth trumps rational thinking. Remember, I'm Simon Blake. Throughout my journey working with actors, musicians, and performers, one resounding truth has become crystal clear. Emotional depth always outweighs rational thinking in creating authentic, compelling art. Yes, logic and technique have their place, but when it comes to truly connecting with an audience, whether on stage, in front of a camera, or through music, deep, honest emotion is what makes the difference. Rational thinking is useful. It helps us plan, analyze, and understand. But it's often the enemy of spontaneity and genuine connection. Overthinking can lead to performances that feel mechanical, rehearsed, or disconnected from the truth of the moment. When we rely too heavily on the mind, we risk turning our craft into a series of calculated moves rather than spontaneous acts rooted in authentic feeling. I focus on emotions that are deeper than feelings, those visceral states that reside in our core beneath surface-level reactions. Feelings are fleeting. Emotions are rooted in our subconscious, in our deepest self. They're the language of vulnerability, rawness, and real connection. When performers access and embody these deep emotions, their work becomes more powerful, more alive, and resonates on a profoundly human level. This is why I always emphasize the importance of cultivating emotional depth. It's about going beyond surface reactions and tapping into those well of genuine feeling. Accessible through practices I teach on emotionalpreparation.com and further explored in my acting books available on Amazon. The more you connect with your inner feelings, those that are rooted deep within, the more authentic and spontaneous your performance becomes. Because, at the end of the day, art that moves us comes from a place of true emotional honesty, not just mental calculation. When you embrace emotional depth over rational thought, your work transforms into a living, breathing experience that can profoundly touch others. That's the real power of acting and music, and the secret to creating art that is truly unforgettable. In over 8,000 acting classes, I've seen a lot of lessons from a lot of people. Let's look at this. Intellect limits spontaneity and natural response. Over the years, I've watched many performers get caught up in their own heads. They analyze every move, overthink their choices, and become so consumed with getting it right that they forget one vital thing: spontaneity. The truth is, intellect, our rational mind, has a tendency to constrain and limit our natural response. When we lean too heavily on thinking, we micromanage ourselves out of genuine, instinctive action. Spontaneity is the heartbeat of real acting and music. It's that unfiltered, raw response that happens when you trust your inner feeling rather than your overly analytical mind. But the more we try to control scenes, the more our responses become rehearsed, stiff, or emotionally detached. Our mind's primary job is to protect and analyze. Yet, in performance, this protective mechanism can block access to the very authenticity we're striving for. Here's the paradox I've come to understand. The more you rely on your intellect, the more you sabotage your natural spontaneity. When you're overthinking, you're less present, less open, and less responsive to the moment unfolding in front of you. That's why I emphasize the importance of cultivating a state where your feelings and instincts take precedence over your thoughts. This isn't about abandoning technique. It's about creating space for the organic response that is born from genuine feeling. One of the ways I teach performers to do this is through emotional preparation, tools and practices you'll find on emotionalpreparation.com. When you connect deeply with your true feelings, those rooted in your core, you free yourself from the mental clutter that blocks spontaneous response. You learn how to trust yourself enough to act from your emotional truth, rather than from a storyboard of overanalytical ideas. In my books, available on Amazon, I delve into how to tap into that inner well of instinct and sensation. Because when you trust your feelings, your responses become more authentic, more alive, and more compelling. The key is to see the mind as a valuable companion, but not the director of your performance. Instead, let your emotional and physical reactions lead, and the spontaneity will follow. Remember, the most memorable performances happen in the moment, not in the mind. When you let go of overanalysis and embrace your natural response, you unlock a level of artistry that resonates deeply with your audience. That's the real magic, spontaneity born from genuine feeling, not intellectual control. Let's keep learning about emotions. Let's learn together. This part is titled, True Artistic Connection Requires Inner Feeling, Not Just Thought. Over my years working with performers, one truth has become undeniably clear. Real artistic connection, the kind that moves people deeply, comes from inner feeling, not just from thinking. I see so many artists get caught up in analysis and overthinking, hoping that their clever techniques or intellectual strategies will carry the performance. But the truth is, thought alone cannot forge a genuine human connection. True artistry flows from a place of authentic inner feeling, those depths of emotion that live beneath the surface, often hidden behind layers of rational thought and self-judgment. Feelings are transient, yes, but emotions, deeper, rooted in the core of who we are what make your work resonate with us. When you connect with that inner feeling and allow it to guide your expression, your art becomes genuine, powerful, and truly unforgettable. I've learned that thinking is useful, but it's unreliable as the foundation of connection. When we rely on our minds, analyzing, calculating, controlling, we distance ourselves from our true experience. That distance shows in our work. It feels superficial, rehearsed, disconnected. But when we slow down, breathe, and tap into our inner feeling, we find an instantaneous, honest response that touches others because it's real. That's why I focus so much on cultivating deep emotional awareness. On emotionalpreparation.com, I share practical tools to help performers access those deep feelings beyond surface-level sensations to tap into their authentic, visceral inner world. My acting books on Amazon go further into this. How to develop emotional depth as your guiding force rather than your analytical mind. Because at the end of the day, the audience doesn't want to just see thought on stage. They want to feel. They want to be moved by the truth that only comes from an inner, felt experience. When your connection is rooted in genuine feeling, your work becomes a living, breathing testament to human vulnerability and shared experience. So, my message is simple. Trust your inner feeling. Cultivate it, embrace it, and let it be the foundation of your art. Because art that springs from genuine inner feeling, not just thought, has the power to truly connect, heal, and transform both performer and audience alike. This summarizes why intellect is unreliable in acting and music. Over the years, I've seen many performers rely too heavily on their intellect, thinking, analyzing, planning every move, which can actually get in the way of true artistry. The truth is, emotional depth always trumps rational thinking. Authentic art doesn't come from the head, it comes from within. Deep, genuine emotion, what I focus on and teach, is rooted in your core, far deeper and more visceral than surface feelings or intellectual strategies. When you connect with that inner depth, your work becomes real. But reliance on intellect not only limits your emotional authenticity, it also limits spontaneity and your natural response. The overthinking mind tends to control, suppress, and censor your instinctive reactions. That's why the most memorable performances are often the ones that appear spontaneous and organic. When you let your intellect lead, you risk turning your craft into something stiff, rehearsed, or superficial. Instead, I teach performers to cultivate a space where their inner feelings can flow freely, allowing genuine reactions to arise naturally. And at the heart of all true artistry is inner feeling, not just thought. True connection happens when you tap into your deepest self and express that in your work. Art that is rooted in inner feeling, built on emotional depth, resonates because it's real. That's what I emphasize on emotionalpreparation.com and in my acting books published on Amazon. Developing the core emotional depth is the foundation for authentic performance. In the end, intellect alone cannot create the depth, spontaneity, or genuine connection that makes art truly powerful. When you trust your inner feelings and allow them to guide your response, your art becomes alive, connecting on a human level and leaving a lasting impact. That's the deep truth I teach. Authentic artistry flows from feeling, not just thinking.